Hey guys, tonight we. Hey guys, tonight we walk barefoot across the cracked tiles of your childhood kitchen, the ones your dad always promised to fix, but never did. You can still smell burnt toast and cheap hairspray, and someone's already yelling in the background. It's always something. The sink drips, the dog whines, and you're already getting blamed for both. You'll recognize this kind of home if you grew up in one. Chaos with a side of selective amnesia. You're the designated scapegoat, the walking magnet for blame. Didn't refill the milk? You. Forgot mom's birthday? Definitely you, even though you bought her that ugly wind chime she pretended to love. You could save a kitten from a burning tree, and they'd still say you probably set the fire. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe. But only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And hey, drop your location and local time in the comments. I love seeing where you're all drifting off from. Now, dim the lights. Maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum. And let's ease into tonight's journey together. The worst part? You start to believe it. That somehow you're broken. The ancient Greeks had a word for this kind of exile within your own family. Ostracismos. When a person was cast out by vote, erased like chalk from marble. Historians still argue whether those exiles deserved it, or if they were just inconvenient. Funny thing is, archaeologists once found a potsherd with the name Pericles etched on it. Yes, that Pericles. Apparently, even leaders get scapegoated. And here you are. Not a leader. Not even a villain, just the quiet one in the corner who absorbs the lightning and says nothing. You wake up early the next day because of course you do. Old habits from a household where sleeping in was somehow offensive. The apartment's quiet. Too quiet. The silence isn't peace. It's a void shaped like your family's noise. And when your phone buzzes, you already know. It's a group text, and they're mad again. Apparently, Aunt Sheila's casserole went missing from the church potluck, and somehow, you did it. You, who now live 2 cities away, don't even attend that church anymore, and are allergic to green beans. But logic was never your family's strong suit. You reread the messages. Snide jabs masked as, quote, concern, long paragraphs of guilt-tripping, and your sister chiming in with, you always make things harder for everyone. You feel like some medieval sinner strapped to the Catherine wheel, except your wheel is digital and spins every time your family decides to be bored and cruel. Historians still argue whether medieval torture devices were used as often as legend claims, but one thing's certain: emotional torture? That's alive and well. And it has your last name. You delete the thread. No reply. That's new for you. You spend the afternoon walking through a park where kids scream, pigeons judge, and the ice cream truck plays a tinny version of Fur Elise. You try not to cry on the bench. You fail. An older woman beside you offers a tissue and says, sometimes you have to let the boat sink so you can swim. You thank her. She nods and feeds a pigeon half her waffle cone. You'll know when it's time. Later, you Google her quote. Nothing. Either she's a poet or a ghost, but her words stay. And they echo louder than your mother's voice ever did. That night, your dreams aren't exactly dreams, more like reruns of old family arguments. Only this time, you're not in them. You hover like a forgotten camera angle while your dad slams his hand on the kitchen table, your brother rolls his eyes in perfect synchrony with your mom's sigh, and the dog, oh, even the dog, chooses to bark in your direction. You wake up with clenched fists, and your jaw locks so tight it feels like medieval dentistry, which, by the way, used pliers and zero anesthesia. Yep, real vibes. You stretch, shuffle to the kitchenette, make tea, and sit at the window like you're starring in your own sad indie film. And that's when you remember. You have an invitation, not to a pity party, but to a real one. Coworker's birthday, minimal small talk, maximum cake. You almost don't go, but then you remember the ice cream lady's words. You'll know when it's time. At the party, you sip soda from a red plastic cup, and listen to two graphic designers debate whether Helvetica is overused. Historians still argue whether the invention of movable type by Gutenberg really was the biggest revolution in communication. But here you are, watching people bond over fonts like they're debating philosophy. You laugh, out loud. Not one person shushes you or tells you to keep your voice down. No one makes a joke at your expense. No one says, "Wow, look who actually showed up." You help light the birthday candles. The wax drips, someone sings off key, and you don't flinch. It's not a breakthrough, but it's a breath. And for the first time in a while, you realize you might not actually be the problem. You walk home slower than usual, letting the city settle around you like a loose cardigan. A street musician plucks something vaguely jazzy on a guitar missing two strings. Somewhere, someone burns toast. The air smells like fried dough and early autumn. It's weirdly comforting. You climb the stairs, open the door to your apartment, and just before flipping on the light, you freeze. Because there it is, a message from your sister. "Mom's in the hospital. You should come." No punctuation, no apology. Just a short, cold jab that tries to tug you back into the undertow. You stare at it for a full minute, then toss your phone face down onto the couch like it's cursed. This would be the part in a movie where dramatic music swells and you're on the next flight out. But your life doesn't have a soundtrack, unless you count the radiator clicking like Morse code. And besides, you've played the drop everything for family role too many times. Still, guilt seeps in through the cracks. You remember reading that in ancient Mesopotamia, they buried family members under the house to keep them close, even in death. But historians still argue whether it was love or superstition that fueled that habit. You, on the other hand, aren't ready to bury anything. Not yet. Not even this resentment that clings to your ribcage like mold. You brew tea. Again. It's your new therapy, herbal and judgment-free. As you sip, you whisper, not a prayer, not really, but something closer to a boundary. "I hope she's okay, but I'm not going." And for once, that feels enough like love and enough like freedom that you don't explain it to anyone, not even yourself. The next morning, you check your phone again, out of habit more than hope. No new messages, no updates, just the same vague note from your sister, still sitting there like a trapdoor in your inbox. You open the fridge and stare into the fluorescent abyss. Half a lemon, oat milk, 3 expired yogurts pretending to be fine. You grab the lemon, slice it. Squeeze it into water because it makes you feel like someone who has their life together. Even if the recycling is overflowing. You scroll through headlines. One catches your eye. Scientists find 2,000-year-old scroll in Herculaneum, now readable thanks to AI. You picture it. Dusty scholars squinting at ash-covered papyrus, trying to decode someone's grocery list or breakup note. Historians still argue whether these ancient writings were sacred or just extremely dramatic journal entries. And it hits you. You've become your own artifact. A collection of unread messages, emotional footnotes, and invisible ink that only you understand. No wonder no one else gets it. Later, you find yourself at the bookstore again. You're not looking for anything, really. Just breathing in that scent of paper and quiet dreams. You grab a copy of The Art of Leaving by some philosopher with a moody name, and even though it's overpriced and full of abstract metaphors, you carry it like a talisman. At home, you mark the first page with a sticky note. You don't owe anyone your undoing. Then you take a long bath with Epsom salts, and your phone far, far away. The water covers your ears, muffling the outside world into nothing more than bubbles and breath, and for the first time in years, you feel no obligation to respond. You wake up with sunlight pouring in through the blinds, just the right kind of gold that makes you forget you haven't washed your sheets in a while. You stretch, yawn, and check your phone. Still quiet. But today, instead of disappointment, there's a strange sort of peace. Like you've finally stopped waiting for an apology that's clearly stuck in the mail. Probably hand-delivered by a tortoise. You walk to the park with your journal tucked under your arm, A tiny, dog-shaped cloud floats across the sky. A toddler waves at you like you're a celebrity. You wave back. For once, you don't feel like the villain in someone else's story. As you scribble in your journal, just thoughts, nothing profound, you remember that time in middle school when your brother blamed you for breaking the TV remote. You hadn't even been home that day, but somehow you were the most likely suspect. Historians still argue whether you should have spoken up or let it go. You chose silence back then. You were trying to be the peacekeeper. But peacekeepers often become emotional landfills, don't they? Beside you on the park bench, an old man feeds pigeons from a paper bag. He chuckles to himself as one bird pecks his shoelace. "They don't ask questions," he says, smiling. "They just take what they need." You nod politely, but you're already writing that down in your mind. Lesson from the pigeons: take what you need. On the walk home, you pass a street mural, vivid oranges, blues, and purples swirling around the words. Rebirth takes silence. You pause, snap a photo. Then keep walking, slowly, like the earth is finally rotating at your speed. You get home and brew a cup of tea, hibiscus, because it's oddly dramatic and feels like something a mysterious ant would drink while revealing family secrets. You sip it slowly, the way Victorian poets probably did while writing odes to dead plants. And then you get that text, just 5 words, from your sister. "Are you ever coming back?" No emoji, no apology, just a flicker of control disguised as a question. You stare at it long enough for your tea to go cold. You don't reply. Instead, you head to the kitchen and make toast, the way you used to do when things felt too loud. Just you, a knife, and the oddly grounding act of spreading butter across burnt bread. You imagine the ancient Egyptians, inventors of flatbread, doing the same, though maybe without the existential dread. Historians still argue whether the pyramids were tombs or power symbols, but you're starting to believe that every family builds their own version of one. Yours was full of blame. You were the foundation. Later that evening, you light a candle, not for meditation, not for ambiance, just to feel like you're creating a moment. You sit on your floor, cross-legged, and whisper, "I forgive you." Not for them, for you, because there's freedom in not needing anyone else to change in order for you to heal. There's freedom in deleting the message and not explaining why. There's freedom in learning how to be the protagonist of your own bedtime story, just without the wicked stepsisters or poisoned apples this time. And as your candle flickers against the wall, you swear it dances to the beat of something beginning, not ending. The morning after the message, you wake up later than usual, sunlight already spilling through the blinds like a nosy neighbor with no concept of boundaries. You stretch, yawn, and for the first time in a long while, you don't feel like you've just woken up inside a problem. You scroll your phone. Nothing from them, but your best friend sent a meme about ducks in tiny shoes. So clearly, some things in life are still good and pure. Over toast. Again. But with peanut butter because you're evolving. You reflect on how you've been conditioned to be the fixer, the designated peacekeeper, the emotional airbag. But the funny thing is, when the fixer walks away, no one actually fixes anything. The cracks just sit there, exposed, like the Leaning Tower of Pisa, an architectural oopsie that somehow became a global treasure. Historians still argue whether Pisa's tilt was poor engineering or divine humor. You're leaning toward the latter. You start jotting things down in a journal. Not goals. Not affirmations. Just small things. Like coffee smells nice and I didn't flinch when someone knocked today. You're rebuilding your world not with declarations but details. Then you go for a walk. No headphones, no destination. Just sneakers on pavement and the sound of your breath. You pass a cat sunbathing like it owns the sidewalk, and for a second, you're jealous of its unapologetic existence. You start thinking about your family, not with rage but with curiosity, like they're artifacts in a museum you used to work at. Familiar, but no longer yours to dust off. And just as you turn the corner back home, you realize something. You've gone a whole day without explaining yourself to anyone. And nothing collapsed. That night, As the wind brushes against your windows like a gentle reminder that the world continues, you lie in bed and wonder, what if they reach out again? What if it's another guilt-laced message or a surprise voicemail dripping with performative remorse? But nothing comes. Not a ping, not a knock, not even a dramatic skywriting message that says, "Come back, we miss our scapegoat." And weirdly, that silence is louder than any argument you've ever had with them. You remember something from high school history, how Napoleon, after being exiled to Elba, managed to escape and march back to power with only a handful of supporters. People either see that as sheer audacity or as the ultimate cautionary tale about second chances. Historians still argue whether his return was genius or desperation masked as confidence. You think about what it means to return. Is it brave, foolish, necessary? You realize you're not Napoleon, and your Elba is this small apartment that finally feels like yours. You spend the next few days filling the space with bits of yourself. A ridiculous lava lamp, a vintage globe, a magnet that says, "I'm not arguing, I'm just explaining why I'm right." You're rebuilding a version of you that isn't shaped by their expectations or guilt trips. One afternoon, while watering your plants, yes, you have plants now, basil and something that might be rosemary but you're too scared to taste it, you get a call, blocked number. Your heart stutters, thumb hovers, but you don't answer. You don't need to. The person you're becoming doesn't pick up just to be pulled back into someone else's mess. You put the phone down, exhale, and turn back to the windowsill where your maybe rosemary sits, reaching for the sun. The next morning greets you with sunlight, so soft it feels like a compliment. You sip your coffee, decaf, because real adulthood apparently includes caring about your heart rate, and you scroll through the news while the world hums on. No crisis texts, no last-minute guilt trips, just quiet. You remember reading once that the Hanging Gardens of Babylon might not have existed at all. Ancient historians described this wonder of the world in such lush, impossible detail. Tiered terraces of green, exotic flowers, waterfalls spilling over sun-drenched stones. But modern scholars still argue whether the gardens were real or just poetic propaganda. That's what your childhood feels like now. A little too curated, a little too suspiciously ideal from the outside. You walk through the quiet apartment, noticing things. That flicker of candlelight bouncing off your mirror, the slow creak of wood beneath your socks, the familiar aroma of that citrusy dish soap you love. Not the kind your mom used to buy in bulk. It's your own life, and for once, it fits. Later, you write in your journal. Yeah, that's right. You journal now, though half the time it turns into doodles of lopsided animals and terrible haikus about air fryers. Still, there's something satisfying about seeing your thoughts outside of your head. You write this: "Being blamed doesn't make me broken. Walking away doesn't make me cruel. Choosing peace isn't betrayal. It feels like a spell, like a small declaration of independence." And that night, as the moon filters through your curtains, you feel it settle deep inside you. That unshakable truth. Your life is yours now. Let's take a moment to wind it down together. The buzz of the day is softening now. Your breath slows, longer, deeper, like the tide pulling gently back from the shore. The weight you've carried, all those years of blame and bending yourself into shapes for other people, it begins to slide off your shoulders, inch by inch. It's not a sudden release, but a slow exhale, like dust caught in sunlight, floating away. Imagine the hush of a vast library at midnight, every book a chapter you've closed with grace. The warmth of a weighted blanket, not just on your body, but around your heart. You are no longer bracing for impact, no longer apologizing just to keep the peace. You are safe, you are whole, you are free.